Greetings viewers and welcome back to my workstation. In this video I'm going to go over all the items you are going to need in order to get your models assembled and painted and ready to play on the table, and then I'll go over a couple items that you may want to pick up later once you get a little bit more familiar with the hobby and putting your stuff together and you want to be a little more creative. As you can see in front of you, the first thing I have here are some tools you may need to get your army snipped out of the frame and start kind of getting the models prepared and assembled so that you can get them painted and ready to play. These are some snippers from Citadel. They came in the little hobby starter kit that I bought when I first started. They've been around for about 2 years now and they're still going strong. Haven't had an issue with them since. Very simple, very small, easy to use. Any little clippers will work. Something that has a, I don't know how well you can see the tip on here. This side is flat and that one's kind of angled just because of the way that they're designed. Something that has more of a flat edge when you snip it so it's flush instead of leaving extra pieces on there, which is kind of the purpose for using these, for again getting the model snipped out of the frame, maybe trimming off some excess plastic, or later on once you get a little bit more creative you can start snipping off arms and heads so you can replace them with whatever it is you desire. So very simple, easy to use tool you cut your stuff out with. I definitely recommend picking these up in some form or fashion or another. You don't have to buy a big expensive pair from the hardware store, just some simple snippers will work. And then along with that, something that not necessarily required, but I highly recommend, and I'm sure there's other hobby enthusiasts out there that will recommend the same, is an X-Acto knife. Very sharp, very useful piece of equipment for helping to trim up and clean up your models, getting them ready for painting later, which again I will go over when I get to the point where we're putting together models and trimming them up so we can get them painted. Usually these come with, or you can purchase separately, a little pack of extra blades. Definitely recommend getting some of these or one that comes with them, just because if you're using this a lot it's going to get dull. You may bend it, break it, depending on how rough you are with your models when you're getting them cleaned up. So definitely get some extra blades if you do pick one of those up. Okay. So once you get your models clipped out of the frame and trimmed up, you're going to need to stick the plastic parts together. There's several different options out there as far as gluing them together. A lot of people use plastic model glue, which definitely makes sense since you are assembling plastic models. However, I don't have the patience for what it takes to use plastic model glue. I usually want to get my stuff stuck together quickly so I can go ahead and start getting on the painted process as soon as possible. I use 2 different types of super glue. Doesn't really matter what brand, style, container, whatever it is you use. The stuff I use is Loctite. It's just the easiest to find at my local store. I use liquid and gel glue. I use the liquid glue when I really don't care if the liquid glue is going to run or drip down on the parts that I'm gluing together, because there have been instances where I've done that and not paid attention and actually ended up gluing the base of the model to the table. So I definitely use this when precision is not required. And then the gel has a little bit more fine tip control and doesn't tend to run everywhere. It just kind of stays in a thick gel substance. So I use this when I need a little bit more, again, precision, or something I don't want dripping or running off the edge, maybe sticking to the table or sticking to something else nearby. So that's basically all you need for that. Again, model glue works just the same, works perfectly for plastic models. Make sure the kind you pick up says for plastic models. They do have some designed for metal and wood and other projects. So just make sure you pay attention to that when you purchase it. And again, either one of those will work for you. So now you've got your models clipped out of the frame, you've got them trimmed up, and you've got them glued together. And just before we get started painting, you're going to need to prime the models. This again is another thing that there are so many options out there, it would be impossible for me to even try to list them all. So I'm just going to show you what I use. I use the basic Krylon white primer. I also have black or gray depending on what base coat I'm using for the army. That way I kind of show a little bit through the bottom if I want it darker toned or if I want lighter highlights on it. I used, again, just basic Krylon white primer. Nothing special fancy about it. I'll go over in another video once we get to that point. Some tips and tricks on how to prime your models and get those done up right so that the primer job doesn't come out looking like crap and you end up being disappointed because you can't really cover that up once you start slapping paint on the model. Another option that's out there that I've just found recently is the primer plus paint mixture in one. So I know there's another company out there called Army Painter that's rather expensive. It kind of pretty much does the same thing as this. I know a lot of people use that and I haven't heard too many complaints about it. I personally don't use it. Again, I just go to my local store and purchase regular primer. It's worked fine for me, so I don't really need to switch. But this is another option for you if you get something with paint and primer. This one is black. So if the models that I'm painting are using a black base coat, you save yourself a little bit of time. instead of having to put the primer on, wait for that to dry, then put on a black base coat, I can spray both this on there at once and get both jobs done, go ahead and start getting into the detailing and washing and everything else that I need to do. So again, we'll get into the priming in another video. So once you've gotten your models primed, obviously you're going to need to put some paint over that primer. If obviously you haven't used the paint and primer mixture, you're still going to need to do some detailing work. So again, one more option. There's a whole lot of companies out there, a whole lot of colors. It's all up to you. Basically what you can find or what you like best. Trial and error is usually the best way to decide which colors you like. One thing I highly recommend before you go out and start buying a truckload of paint from the store and get home and don't end up using half of it, kind of like I've done. Again, I'm trying to help you learn from my mistakes. Kind of gather in your mind an idea of what color scheme and maybe a theme that you want to go with your army. For example, if you chose Tyranids, and let's say you were imagining them being in kind of a swampy terrain, gather in your mind some colors that you'd like to see, perhaps some greens, browns, blacks, items that you'd like to see put on the base as far as shrubbery and different foliage you'd see in a swamp, or perhaps maybe some desert tau, you're going to go with the browns, different hues of that, and different ideas for basing stuff. What that'll do is that'll kind of eliminate the need again for you to go buy a whole lot of paint that you're going to end up not needing or using. You'll have a better idea in your mind of what you're looking for, such as browns and greens, and then you can focus more on just the browns and greens section of the paint aisle rather than staring at the whole thing for an hour and a half in the store without even being able to decide what it is you want. Again, a lot of brands out there. These are just the ones that I use. There's more out there. I'm sure you can get some more information from other people, or maybe somebody can comment below and let you know what they use and why it works for them. First one, it's one of the main brands that I use is Folk Art. They have a very large variety of paints. They're very cheap, and you can find them at pretty much any store, Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Michaels, anything carries this brand, as well as the next one, which is Apple Barrel. The bottles are just about the same. They each have their own different little hue and shades of whichever colors it is you're looking for. So good to check out a couple different brands just to find the perfect color that you're looking for. More expensive option for paint, something else that I use, again, they come in a variety of colors and they do a very good job of numbering and coating their paints to go in darkest to lightest, so that once you start getting into highlighting and shading and darkening in areas, you can kind of stick to the same color basis. This is Reaper paints. They come in these little dropper style bottles, a little bit smaller than the Folk Art and Apple Barrel bottles, yet a little bit goes a long way, and is again very high quality, kind of expensive end paint to use. All does the same job. Again, it's just more so on you, on what you like to, how you like to use the paint, the different consistencies of the paint that you like to use, and the actual shade of the paint. Again, every brand, they may have 100 different greens, but each one is going to be individual to that brand, and perhaps you'll like something a little bit better than another, and that'll kind of lead you towards picking up that particular brand. So we've got our paints picked out. You're obviously going to need to have something to slap that paint onto the models with. When you're first starting out, I wouldn't recommend going out and buying a whole lot of professional grade, expensive, fancy brushes. You're just going to need something a little bit basic just to kind of help you learn the ropes. Again, rather than going out and purchasing a whole bunch of expensive stuff that you're not going to need, I would recommend if you go to your local hobby store, you should be able to find a little multi-pack of brushes that come in a variety of styles within that pack, and some of them actually even come with duplicates of the same brushes, perhaps some of the ones that you're going to need or that I'll show you, and that'll kind of help you out in case you're being a little rough with your brushes, or maybe you got one that kind of fell apart on you or was a little bit less quality than it should have been, so you'll have a backup instead of having to keep running out and going and buying more brushes. Essentially, all you're going to really need in the beginning is a little bit wide of a brush just to kind of throw your base coat paint on there. Nothing fancy, nothing spectacular about it. Just dip it in the paint, slap it on there. Once you got your primer on, get your base color onto your model. Then you're going to need at least 1 to 2 maybe detail brushes, a little bit smaller and finer of a tip. And this is just, again, just to do a little bit of details, maybe put some trim on the armor, draw a little design on there, kind of put some eyes on them, whatever it is you're going to do. And then, again, you can get even smaller than this or larger depending on what it is you're painting. That's basically it for all that you are going to need in order to get your models assembled, clipped out of the frame, and basic paint jobs. So now I'm going to get into the stuff that you may want to pick up later, or something maybe when you get a little bit more advanced and feel more knowledgeable in the hobby, you can go ahead and start picking up extra stuff to add a little bit extra flavor and character to your models. The very first thing I would highly recommend you picking up is a small drill, little hand drill here, also known as a pinning drill. This is again the Citadel one. It has a little tiny drill bit on here that's actually about the same exact size as a small paper clip, which I'll explain to you later how that comes into play. This comes with a little pack of several drill bits. Because they are small, they're kind of fragile. Again, if you're being rough, it's going to have a tendency to break. You're probably going to break a couple of them, which I have done. I have one extra one left in this box here before I may need to go pick up another. This has several different uses. One of the main uses that I use it for now, since they're kind of phasing out the metal models, is drilling out the gun barrels on your models. This again adds a little bit of extra character and flavor to your army, makes a little bit more depth, rather than just having a flat tip on a gun, which you may be able to see later if I show you. This, I don't know if it's going to focus on it. I'm trying here for you. Come on. There you go. You can see I put holes in the tip of the gun barrel here and off to the side. Again, it looks a lot better once it's painted up rather than just having a gun with a flat end on it. I haven't seen too many guns with a barrel that doesn't have a hole in it. So that's kind of the main use for that. If you do happen to have some metal models, perhaps maybe somebody that used to be in the hobby gave you theirs and that's how you ended up with them, or some of the models that haven't been quite replaced by the fine cast yet, you pick some of those up. The super glue, or whichever glue you use to hold the metal models together, usually doesn't do quite as good of a job as the plastic models because the metal parts are a lot heavier. If you drop the model or it tips over on the table, something bumps into it, it's going to have a tendency to lose some of its original pieces and kind of pop off and fall apart on you. What this drill is used for is for a process called pinning, which again I can go over later if there's a big enough demand for it. Again, they've kind of gone away from the metal models, so I'm not sure how useful that skill will be for you. You take the two pieces of metal model that you're trying to join together, you drill a hole in either piece, kind of an exact same space where they would match up. Drill a hole, clip a piece of paper clip that's just big enough, glob some super glue in there, stick the paper clip in the holes and join the two pieces together. Kind of gives a little bit more strength in case, again, it tips over, falls, drops, something bumps into it. It's not as likely, but still possible to fall apart and all of its original pieces is just painted. So definitely something you wouldn't want to happen, so a good idea to pick up one of these drills. Perhaps you can pick it up when you're picking up the first stuff that I showed you, or wait a little bit later till you get more comfortable in using this, because again, as with doing the gun barrels, it may require a little bit of precision. It's not something you want to rush and jump right into because you're just going to get frustrated if you mess up or the hole's not just right, and then it kind of just ruins your whole day and modeling process from there. So put that aside. If you're going to be, again, you find a theme to your army and you're going to decide that, let's say you want to put them on a snow style base, you're going to need something to, once you paint that base, the particular color you want, you're going to need to have something to stick items to it, such as maybe sand or grass or rocks, whatever it is you want to put on there. White PVA glue works just fine. It's the same thing as Elmer's. This is a Martha Stewart craft glue I picked up at Michael's. Nothing special. It's just kind of the same formula. It's just a white glue. You're probably going to more than likely want something that dries clear, which this does, so I would definitely check that when you go to purchase it. It should say somewhere on there, just like this one, it says dries clear. Again, depending on what color you use for your base. Obviously, if you're doing a snow base, you're not going to mind if it's white. However, if you decide to make another army later or change your mind in another time, you're going to be stuck with a whole tube of glue that you're not going to want because it dries white. So I would, again, definitely recommend buying something that dries clear. So that's the white glue you're going to use to stick the stuff on there with. And you're going to need some kind of basing supplies to actually glue on there, depending on, again, which style base you want. This is some modeling sand and static grass. These both came with, again, the starter kit for Warhammer 40k. It has just basic green grass and brown dirt. Again, you can paint over the brown dirt if you put it on there and paint it whatever color you want, just to have the texture on your base. The green grass, you can't really paint over that, so if you're not wanting the green grass in there and the other stuff in that hobby kit doesn't appeal to you, then obviously this would do no good for you. Those are just smaller kits, smaller tubs for basing. This is a lot larger one from Citadel. This is the one that I use. It's the same thing as the green static grass, except it's brown. I really don't want to open this up and show it to you right now because you probably won't be able to see the detail of the grass, but it's kind of the same stuff you'd see using for like little model train sets and kind of little hobby stuff like that. This is just brown. Again, the same thing. It's grass. They come in a variety of styles. There's a lot lighter shades. There's darker greens. There's light browns, light yellows. Different names for each one, scorched earth and all that. But again, this is burnt grass and this is just the regular green grass. So something else you can look into depending on what theme and basing scheme you want to go with for your army. Something that may come to you a lot later, perhaps, or maybe a little bit sooner if you feel more talented. I am not quite as good of a sculptor as most people out there in a lot of the work I've seen. However, I do still use green stuff now and again to kind of add a little bit extra, especially with my Chaos and Nurgle themed army. Add a little bit of gloppy flesh or maybe some intestines hanging out, which I'll show you later when we get to the modeling portion and I get to kind of a basic idea of green stuff. Again, I'm by no means an expert in this, and there's a lot of other people out there that could guide you a little bit better than me. But basically all this is a modeling putty. It comes in two parts initially. It's blue and yellow. You kind of clip off as much as you need, roll it all together until it turns green, kind of slap it on and maybe cover up the area you're trying to cover or create an effect that you're doing. Let it sit, and once it hardens, it's about as hard as the plastic of the models itself. You can paint right over it and keep on going as though it was already there initially. So something, again, maybe you want to pick up once you get a little bit more advanced later. And some kind of sculpting tool to use once you get the green stuff on there. This is just a regular clay sculpting tool. It's got a little pointed, it's not really a sharp edge, but it's kind of a little beveled edge on there just to kind of cut through the putty. And then you've got a little scoopy hook type end on this side, kind of help you press the green stuff in the areas you're going to need it and kind of scrape it out and put holes in it, whatever it is you're trying to, again, the theme you're going with, to help maneuver it where you need it. And one of the last things I'll cover that you're probably going to want to pick up later at some point, depending on the army you're going with. A lot of armies have different options for war gear or weapons or ideas and things to put on the vehicles, such as different guns and options. The magnets that I use, they come from a company called Magcraft. They come in these little fancy dual-walled containers just to kind of keep them from grabbing everything on your desk. These magnets come in a ridiculous amount of variations. They have sphere magnets, cube magnets, cylinder magnets. I mean, they've got everything. I just mainly use the disc magnets. What these are used for, again, as I mentioned, the different war gear options for your troops and units and your vehicles, is because a lot of places that you go may have, what you see is what you get rules, and if your guy is not holding a flamethrower, then essentially for the purposes of the game he doesn't have a flamethrower. So that can kind of be a little bit of a pain in the butt if you've already glued it to the model and you painted it up. You don't want to snap that off of there and start breaking parts, and then you have to redo your paint job and cover everything up. Makes it a little bit of a hassle later. Or perhaps you have a tank with different turret options or side guns. You want to be able to swap those out so that it's easier to, number one, remember and kind of appease your opponents so they know what's on there. Also during play, if let's say that weapon gets destroyed off the vehicle, it makes it a lot easier to just pull it off the vehicle, set it aside, you know it's broken, it's not there. But again, these magnets come in a gigantic variety of shapes, styles, sizes. These are some giant disc magnets. Again, I'll use those for bigger pieces such as on vehicles. And then the little disc magnets I'll use on such as troop arms and hands. So I've kind of covered all the supplies that you're going to need and what you're going to want. And I'll just kind of show you what I've done and you get a little bit more of an idea of what I'm talking about. Alright, so we have here the second defiler that I've started working on, try to get a little bit better of a model than the first one that I made, since I kind of just threw some paint on it and made it look like crap. Looks like a regular defiler when he's standing here. However, I did my best to try and magnetize all the pieces I could possible. The arms, again, are magnetized, so if I want to swap out from close combat weapons to a different gun or missile launcher or something, the arms do come off, easily replaceable. I can put them on there, or if they're destroyed during play, pull them off, set them aside. I know that that weapon's destroyed. So we've got those two. I've also got the main cannon for the model magnetized, because more than likely when I'm playing with this guy, this is the one that everybody's going to get rid of first, because they don't want to get shot from 72 inches across the board. So again, that comes out easy to display a weapon destroyed result. The main body is also magnetized to the legs, so if it is wrecked during play, I just pull this whole top section off, set it aside, and then just the kind of carcass of the defiler can stand there and remember where he was and he's wrecked, and I don't have to go find a crater and all that stuff to put it in place to remember that's where it was for game purposes. And then just these two main arms in the front are also magnetized, again, for weapon destroyed results or what have you. So that's kind of it for the vehicle portion. Easy to see for that, which parts have been removed and out of play. And then also I have some Grey Knights that I've decided to magnetize as best as I could for purposes of gameplay and showing what war gear options they have. So this is the army that I'm actually currently working on in and amongst all the other things that I'm doing. So first thing I did obviously was I magnetized the arms onto the models so that they're easy to take off, and then the hands with the different options. So I've got such as a hammer here I can take the sword from, you know, extra parts or whichever model and actually stick it on there. Makes it a little bit easier. So now, you know, when I'm in play, I can say, okay, well, this guy has the sword, that guy has the hammer, or whatever warrior option, or the halberd here. Easy to swap the parts out and kind of display while you're playing what model has what part. Makes it a lot easier for you to remember, because you've got a lot of other things going on the table that you perhaps have to worry about. So just something to keep in mind. Again, we'll get to the magnetization section and green stuff and everything else that I've covered here in due time. Just give me time to get there, and we're going to keep proceeding from here on out. The next video I'm going to do, I'm actually going to show you what comes in the box when you purchase that big fancy thing and bring it home. And then I'm going to get into how to clean up, clip out, and get your models prepared for priming so we can move on to the next step of painting and so on and so forth. So thank you for watching. Please leave any feedback, and if you have any comments, questions, concerns, something else you'd like to perhaps see in more detail or know about. If you found the video useful, please like it, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.